in my previous video, I discussed horror and the different shapes and sizes it can manifest in. One of these was intentional horror, and in it I highlighted Dead Space and Silent Hill 2. These two games meant a lot to me, but I wouldn't have played them if I hadn't first tried Resident Evil 2. This title was my first introduction to the genre of survival horror. Its tense atmosphere of being stuck inside a police station amidst the apocalypse with terrifying enemies, as well as the scarcity of items, making you truly judge what was important to keep. It left a lasting impression on me, where I wanted to chase that feeling again. It got me to branch out further in the Resident Evil lineup.
A Destiny reference.
Yeah, well, your Destiny reference is fucking stupid, you dumbass.
I think it is valid given that there are pods that have light.
What
And...
screen here? What screen thing?
Whoa, it's my grandma. What the hell? Hi, grandma.
What the fuck? Afterwards, I tried other horror franchises, such as the aforementioned Dead Space and Silent Hill, and loved those games as well. But, as Resident Evil Requiem approaches in February, I wanted to take a look back at the game that kick-started my love for the genre, and ask the question, is it really as good as I remember? To start, I do want to claim that I unfortunately haven't played the original Resident Evil 2, so my opinions and feelings are going solely based on the remake. I will talk about some elements from the original to compare/contrast, but I will be judging the game on its own merits primarily. I'll start with the story, as I think that is the weakest part of this game. Not to say I think it's terrible, instead, it's just serviceable in my opinion, as it does what it needs to do to get our characters from one location to the other. In Leon's story, he just joined the police force, but had gotten a call to stay away. A few days later, he decides to head down to Raccoon City to see what's going on. When he arrives, the city is in shambles. Zombies now roam the streets alongside other mutated abominations. While exploring the RPD, he encounters an FBI agent, Ada Wong. Together, they attempt to unravel the secrets of the mysterious Umbrella Corporation and where the virus is being kept. After delving deep into the sewers, they find the bioweapon inside the Umbrella Labs, with Ada turning on Leon, as she's not actually an agent, but instead a mercenary, with Ada just wanting the virus to sell to the highest bidder. Leon questions her motives, and eventually she gives up her story, before being shot by a scientist and falling to what you can naturally assume is her death. But then she shows up at the end to kick Leon down with a rocket launcher to blow up Mr. X. Which, I don't know if there's like a piece of media that shows what happens to Ada after she falls off, but how in the fuck does she survive that? Seriously, she shows up in Resident Evil 4 like nothing had happened, even though we watched her fall from a ridiculous height. I like the fan theory that William Birkin secretly allocated 30% of his G-Fire's research funding to build and maintain the world's largest ball pit at the bottom of that shaft, and that Ada was able to survive because of it. But I digress. Afterwards, the place is set to self-destruct so as to not let the virus out. So Leon has to hurry and catch up to a train before the place blows up. Now, in Claire's story, everything is pretty much the same, except you don't encounter Ada, but instead Sherry, a young girl left orphaned by the apocalypse. Claire attempts to help Sherry escape, but the police chief Irons has other plans, as he steals Sherry, and Claire has to chase after him. Eventually, Claire gets back Sherry and they enter the Umbrella Labs. Sherry was infected with the virus, and the scientist that shot Ada, it was her mother. She's responsible for the bioweapon in the first place, and so she allows Claire to access the antivirus to cure Sherry. They're actually the ones who start up the train to escape the factory. I left out some details, but that's essentially the rough outline of the story. My main complaints boil down to the fact that Leon and Claire's routes do not intersect. In the original, the actions you took in the A route, A being the first run, B being the run afterwards, so the character you didn't play as, affected your B run. It allowed you to see what the other character was doing while you were off on your own journey. Unfortunately, in the remake, they've removed this, so now both routes play out exactly the same minus a few details and characters, and the B routes feel like hard modes instead, as they don't match with the other character's story, as you explore and loot things that the other character should have gotten before you showed up. It's a shame, as it sounded like such a cool mechanic but ended up being underutilized in the remake. Even though overall, I don't think the story is that great, I think that the best parts of the narrative come from those little moments. For example, early on in Leon's campaign, as he's trudging down the dark corridors to get to the officer on the other side of the building, he quietly whispers to himself,
"You got this."
It immediately endears the character to the audience, affirming that Leon is equally as scared as the player. Another moment occurs after a near-death experience where he is saved by Lieutenant Marvin Braun. The lieutenant is clearly hurt, Leon saying that they need to find a hospital to help him, but here, Marvin does not want to be a burden on the young cop. He pulls rank, calling him a rookie.
Get you to a hospital.
No, I am not the priority here.
Lieutenant, I'm not just gonna leave you here.
I'm giving you an order, rookie. You save yourself first.
Essentially saying he knows best for the situation, and what's best is for Leon to get out and save himself. Marvin knows that there's no sanctuary in Raccoon City. The city was doomed the moment the T-Virus escaped the labs. Furthermore, in Leon's run, I think that while it doesn't make much sense for Leon to immediately fall in love with Ada, I do like their intimate moment before he enters the lab. On subsequent replays of the story, it shows how Ada is able to manipulate Leon into getting him to do what she wants. The environment is intense. From waste-filled sewers to overgrown laboratories, your time spent in Raccoon City will not be inviting. And to occupy this area are different types of enemies. The most common one of all is the zombies. Their designs are sick, flesh peeling off their faces. It complements the new dismemberment system well, as you can target their limbs to shoot them off. This won't stop them though, as they'll keep crawling after you. The most surefire way to stop them is a bullet in the head, with an incredibly satisfying squelch as you burst their head open, flesh splitting in half and chunks of brain matter spilling onto the floor. Their sound design plays into their design well. While it's not as evocative as the other sounds in this game, I do think that the roars and guttural noises these enemies produce are enough to scare the player if they're not careful, especially when they take you by surprise. The dismemberment allows the horror of their bodies breaking down to tie into this, as you can easily knock them down with a few shots through the legs to prevent them from walking, or shoot their arms off to make sure they don't grab you and get a little tasty nibble. They can still bite you though, unfortunately. And turns out they do increased damage as a trade-off for their lack of mobility. The inclusion of the dismemberment mechanic also plays into ammo conservation, as it actually saves ammo by shooting their legs or arms, generally taking around 3 to 4 shots to destroy their limbs, which means you can knock their legs off and make evasion easy. I think it's a very cool system that adds a lot more depth to the micromanagement options. Throughout this game, you also encounter the beloved Licker, the Resident Evil icon, with the original RE2 being the birthplace of it, as it first appears in that entry. Whenever you think of Resident Evil and its monster designs, the one that most likely pops in your head first is the Licker, from its striking appearance, looking as if someone was turned inside out, muscles and tendons showing alongside their brain, with a tongue that can pierce their prey and claws to rip them apart. And for how much they're revered, the game doesn't really use the enemy that often, with the Licker only appearing a few times in Leon's playthrough in the RPD and the labs. In Claire's run though, there's a few more in the basement of the RPD. Their appearance alongside them rarely showing up adds to their mystique, however, where them being only in a few places heightens the tension, having it be truly frightening when they show up, especially on that first playthrough. The Licker's main gimmick is similar to that of clickers in The Last of Us, where they struggle to see but have a really good hearing. So whenever you do encounter them, it is heavily recommended to take it slow. The sound design plays into this tension well, as you can hear their snarls and growls. It shows that the virus has taken this regular human and turned them into something bestial, primal, with its only goal being to kill anything that moves. His biggest weakness is flash grenades, which paralyzes them, leaving them open to getting a few good hits in. Make sure you're fast though, as their claws are deadly and can rip you apart quickly if you're not careful. Now, for the most infamous enemy found in Resident Evil 2, Mr. X. He is a pursuer, which means he cannot be killed. But if you do enough damage, you can down him, which will immobilize him for about 30 seconds. He will eventually get up though. He first appears in both routes once you extinguish the flames created by the helicopter crash. He will lift the helicopter up and push it to the side. It immediately shows the player just how fucking strong this guy is. And if he can do that to a helicopter, what could he do to a little human like you? He then proceeds to chase you throughout the building in your journey to get 2 fuses, with his loud stomps echoing across the building, highlighting his presence and making every door you cross a potential point for him to appear from. I don't think I'm alone in expressing that without Mr. X, this game would not work as well as it does. Sure, he doesn't appear all too often throughout the game, but it's more so the idea of his presence. After Ada blows up Mr. X with a truck, you're led to believe that that's the last you'll see of him for the rest of the game. However, later you play as Ada in a short section, which he appears again in a quick intense chase scene. It leaves you questioning when he's going to show up next, It's a unique addition to the horror elements I hardly hear people talk about. For me, the horror of a character like Jack Baker isn't how he looks. I mean, sure, the guy is fucking terrifying, but rather, it's when you lose sight of him, knowing he's out there, unsure of when he'll pop up again. That is truly what makes him so scary. It adds so much to a game when you can let your imagination run wild, allowing you to conjure up some truly terrible things. This element comes through in Mr. X, where knowing that he's out there makes every place a potential area he comes from. This guy spooked me so much when I first was playing that I would hide out in the safe rooms until I was confident enough to go back out there. Safe to say, I was very happy when I got to kill that bastard for good. The gameplay tends to be what makes or breaks a survival horror game. It's all about split-second reactions when you're constantly making decisions like, do I use this knife to escape an enemy's grasp, or save it for later and chunk the damage? Another decision could be ammo usage. If there's an enemy in a hallway, is it worth it to attempt to kill the zombie or to run past it? And in hardcore, the only way to save is by using a limited resource like ink ribbons, so another layer is added on top of everything else. What makes a great survival horror game is the resources being scarce but not too scarce. It's an incredibly tough balancing act to juggle. Give too much, and the gameplay tips in the direction of being a more action-focused game, as it's easiest to just mow down all the enemies, and you're not worried about ammo. There's enough for everyone. Not given enough resources, and the player feels incredibly limited in what they can do, and it's not restrictive in a fun way. I think overall, the game handles resource management in a great way. Most of the items you receive being either gunpowder to make more ammunition, herbs to heal you, or quest items that you have to store in your inventory. Having to juggle so many things makes games like this fun, where you have to determine if dropping an item for another is truly worth it. Maybe after storing items you can come back, but perhaps there's zombies in the area, so you have to be careful else to not use another precious healing item. This game is also tough as nails though. Having played it a ton, even getting S rank with Leon and Claire, I ended up dying to the stage 2 G fight during recording a lot. It's no pushover, requiring precise movements and knowledge of the environment around you. And on hardcore, getting hit just a few times meant certain death. Even worse if you're trying to line the boss up to get hit by the crane. Most boss fights in this game act as more of a way for it to force you to use your resources, with the area usually littered with ammo and health pickups, so you're never truly down for the count if you run out of ammo. However, if you use too much ammo on the boss, you will be out of it, so the game requires you to have some skill to defeat them. As for the fights themselves, I think the first and third G fights are lacking in a core mechanic. Fights in games typically are like a puzzle to solve, where you have to figure out the solution to deal damage to the boss. In this game, however, those two fights I mentioned, and a few others, tend to be bullet sponges, soaking up as much damage as possible without changing up the fight to keep you on your toes. I truly wish the fights were more involved by adding mechanics to the fight to keep it feeling fresh. For example, what if for the third G fight, the enemy retreats up the wall to regenerate its health, and you have to shoot it down? This is just an example of what could be used to spice up these encounters and make them the satisfying test of skill we all want them to be. Lastly, the environments in this game are some of the most beautiful, haunting renditions of classic locations I've seen, the RPD being the first one you encounter. I recall, as I first stepped into the building, feeling intimidated by its size, with the statue looming in front of me. It creates quite the memorable first view as you enter. The place looks shockingly clean when you first arrive, the floors being scrubbed, reflecting the ceiling lights off them. It contrasts excellently with the burning and apocalyptic city you have to run through to get here. It's unsettling, as if this main hub was left unaffected by time. The same applies to all the safe zones in the building, with them all feeling clean and safe, the feeling they want a safe zone to have. A break from the action, something you can relax in and settle your nerves. I do wish they kept the original safe zone tracks in, the music only coming in slightly if you turn on a light, but never again. The intention of stripping back the music and making it more subdued so that the player feels more immersed works some of the time, but the magic can be lost alongside the ambience those tracks bring, where it can make a place have a more haunting atmosphere, or more intense for when the game ramps up. Like I was referring to with the save music, it presents this track with the embodiment of, you're safe in here, but there's still threats outside. It's a shame to have missed out on some of the iconic tracks, and I would have loved a toggle to keep the music for those who want that original feel. Outside of those rooms, however, we have the blood-soaked east hallway, showcasing carnage in previous attempts to combat the zombies here, with corpses littering the floors. from the second floor where the first licker presides, having killed any zombies that were in that area. It works really well as a beginner area, introducing the puzzle elements that you'll encounter throughout the game, as you have to search out and locate buttons for the keypad to unlock lockers. Which is a bit weird, because I don't know why you can't just press the switches down, as it should work without the buttons, but whatever. To the large statues that you have to unlock by entering a combination found from your notebook. It works well enough getting the player accustomed to the flow of the game. Side note, I wish the game escalated the puzzles more, however, as it feels like the difficulty stays around the same. It didn't feel as if anything really challenged my ability to problem solve and think outside of the box. Most of the puzzles resolve around finding an item and seeing how that fits into something, which is fine for what the game wants to be. More about resource management and the items play a role in that. This has to fill up a precious item slot, something you'd most likely want to use for a health item or ammo. Anyway, I think the rest of the locales work well in providing unique locations that your journey takes place in. I think personally, the scariest place for me is the Umbrella Labs. It's the birthplace of the virus, being located below the sewers. However, the center structure feels large and imposing, like the statue at the beginning of the game, but way bigger. It also feels cold and purely for functional purposes. Where the statue at the beginning had the function of being man-made, the lab feels fake, like a robot designed it. The same feeling echoes most of the tight corridors in that area, where they share the same cold, empty feeling, and that they feel too clean and not impacted by the spread of the virus. I say most, because there's a few areas that do reflect this, with the break room having blood staining the walls and some zombies still presiding in this area. Alongside a cafe, which is a very freaky environment, having tables close by each other and infected inside with the ability to sneak up on you. This room is coated with the lingering undead, as well as the room being a mess with chairs and tables flipped over, telling the player through the environment about the struggle. Alongside the overgrown labs where the bioweapon Plant 43 resides, having transformed the rooms into deep roots and plants. Alongside the ivy, humanoid plant monsters that will fall from the ceiling and reanimate if you get too close. Speaking of these creatures, I do think their noises are probably the creepiest to me, with it having a low, creaky voice. It is shockingly loud too, as you can hear them from the other side of the room, almost as if the whole area is vibrating with the noise. To answer the question I posed all the way back at the beginning of the video, yes, it is a really good game. The story may not be the best, but it isn't a detriment to the overall package this game provides. Plus, I didn't even get into the side content. Those modes could last you for days. I think my biggest issues come with the length of the base game, as I wish it were just a bit longer, alongside the lack of story continuity, messing with what otherwise would be a great game. Regardless, I think it's still one of my favorite survival horror games, with RE9 hopefully usurping that title soon. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know what else you would like to see. I would love to make more Resident Evil content, as I love these games dearly. Also, write a comment detailing what you love or dislike from this game. I read all of the comments. And lastly, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps the channel a ton. And I'm still very new to this whole YouTube thing, so any critiques you have, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments as well. Good night, everyone.